All right, good morning. Can everybody hear me? If you will, type in your little question box there just to let me know you can hear. Okay, so some people can hear me loud and clear. All right, and if I'm too loud, just turn your volume down. That's our solution. Um, I'm going to take a little time here in just a minute when we get started to break down a little deeper about the mitigation, and I will send this presentation out because I've included a bunch of links in here. And then if you will save your additional Q&A to the end of the webinar, and then we'll take your questions and answers. And after we've completed this webinar today, I'm going to have all the questions and answers typed up, and we will include them on the website as well as the action plan. So if they're pertinent to the discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get started here. Can everyone see my screen as well? We're good to go. All right. Okay, so thanks for those comments, and here we go. I see that. Okay, so here's the an overview of the mitigation funds. We have 15 counties. These are the same counties that were eligible for unmet need funding. Originally, we have $26,961,000 for mitigation. Admin is capped at 5%. Planning is capped at 15. 50% of all the funds must benefit LMI populations, and 50% of all the funds must be spent in the 3 most impacted zip codes. And just for clarification, again, those are 31705, 31548, and 31520. Now, so originally we had 26 million, almost 27 million, and then on December 3rd, we've got notice that we got an additional 13 million for Georgia. So some of that is going to go in the unmet needs portion of the funding that we're working with the mid zip codes on. But we got an additional 5.4 million for mitigation, bringing us to a total now for mitigation projects of 32,367,654. So again, all the requirements on the funds still apply. Half have to go in the mid zip codes. Half have to go in, must go in the must benefit LMI population. So all the stipulations still apply. If you're curious about the press release, I've included a link at the bottom here, so you can go check out and see what we got, because we got additional funds for both 2017 disasters and 2018 disasters. The timeline is still the same. In the last webinar, we talked about the notice that came out, just talking about the 28 billion in funds. And then August 30th of 2019, HUD announced the 6.8 billion in mitigation funds. And Georgia was allocated 26, almost 27 million. Now we're at the 32. So again, I want to stop right here and hit that the Federal Register notice states that HUD seeks to they want data-informed investments, high impact projects, and we're trying to reduce the loss to life and property. So not just life or property, but life and property. So we're looking for transformative projects or activities. So when you're think about things that will have a high impact or yield a high impact in your community. So on November 15th, 2019, we posted on our website a pre-application, and I've included a link here of some of the questions that I've been getting. I've got a lot of questions via email, and we're trying to wait and answer them all together. But some of the questions I've been getting are basically, some of them are answered in the pre-application. So I'll just put it that way. It's about an 8-pager. But it has some links to get you into different directions. It is a lot of reading. And HUD worked with FEMA to put the notice together. So I think they inadvertently confused two different types of funding. One community development, one's emergency management. But as we go through this, I'm going to get into where we have to look first when we're trying to figure out what our eligibility criteria are. So we're on the second of our 2 webinars. They will be recorded. Once we're done with this one, they are going to be put up and posted on DCA's YouTube page, but we'll have a link from our mitigation page. We're going to answer questions, and then January 15th, 2020, your mitigation pre-application is due to DCA. So if you read the application, it'll tell you how to submit those. There's a couple of ways you can submit them. We prefer email. And we also kind of outline in there exactly what we need from you for, we don't want a bunch of attachments. And this isn't the end all be all, but you have to submit a pre-app to be invited into the full round of applications. So we have to have a draft action plan published for public comment by February 21 of 2020. But we will hold 2 public hearings to gather input before we post that draft action plan. One's going to be in Albany, probably at the ASU campus, Albany State University campus, and one will be located in Kingston. And I'm working with the folks there in the local level to put that together. Julie Hagler's helping me out. So we're going to continue to consult with the local governments after we get this webinar put out. Do your best to put the application together in a way you think you can best describe the needs of your community when you're talking about mitigation. So then we'll have the 45-day public comment period after we post our draft action plan on the website. And after that public comment period, we will take all questions or comments that we've gotten. We'll address all those, answer them. We'll put all that in the action plan, and we will submit that to HUD. HUD then will have 60 days to review and approve or reject the action plan. Now I want to get into, so I've got a lot of emails and different inquiries into what's eligible, what's not eligible, and the fact that on the FEMA lifelines, they include a lot of things that actually aren't eligible. So it causes a lot of confusion, and I don't know that HUD did that. I mean, I'm sure it was unintentional, but combining these 2 programs, there are some things that are eligible from FEMA that are not eligible from HUD. The very first thing, and this comes directly from the Federal Register notice, it must meet the definition of a mitigation activity. And that's activities that increase resilience to disasters and reduce or eliminate, and it's talking long-term risk of loss of life, injury, damage to, and loss of property. So these are all ands here, so they're all inclusive. And suffering and hardship by lessening the impact of future disasters. So just make sure it meets that definition first. And then it has to also address a current and future risk that we've identified in our mitigation needs assessment. So DCA is working with GEMA, because GEMA has done a great job at identifying what the risks are in these areas. So we'll take that into consideration when we're developing our mitigation needs assessment. And we're also going to take all these pre-applications, and they're going to feed into what constitute the greatest need. And then the biggie is number 3 here. It has to be a CDBG eligible activity under Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. And in a later slide, I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper. Or it has to have a waiver to be eligible pursuant to a waiver or alternative requirement. And so this is all inclusive, and it has to meet a national objective, including additional criteria for mitigation activities and covered projects. I included a link here where you can look at the national objectives and the how do you meet those national objectives. And then on the topic of covered projects, a covered project is not something we're going to have to really worry about here in Georgia, but if you hit a covered project, you'd have to do the benefit cost analysis that FEMA requires. However, covered projects are anything over $100 million, and we do not have $100 million for mitigation activities, so I don't think we'll have to worry about. And then our plan, our action plan, DCA, the state action plan, must describe how the funded activities will satisfy all these requirements. So just think about that as you're submitting your pre-application. Going to hit this activity funnel again. So everything we just talked about, it's got to meet a national objective. It's got to be an eligible activity per the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. It needs to meet a state, regional, local impact or need, a risk need. And then it's got to address, you're going to have to spell out which community lifeline that it's addressing. And this is where some of the community or some of the confusion's coming in. Then we want to see leverage from the local government side. And that's, so if you have a project that, or an activity where some of the stuff would be CDBG eligible and then some of the stuff would not, the local government can pay for the stuff that's not eligible and potentially leverage that against the eligible CDBG activity. We're also looking for, how ready are you to proceed with this? We do have a long timeline to spend these funds. However, it's been a pretty good while since the disaster, so we're trying to get these funds out the door to help the communities as quickly as possible. And then you come down to these 3 priority activities that you can submit, and it has to go through a unit of local government, either a city or a county. So just remember that. So again, separate of these 3 that you're submitting, you can submit something to us for planning needs, but we're looking to see if the project or activity that you're working on is in a local plan, is it in your comp plan or your hazard mitigation plan or any master plans, and have you thought about increasing your building codes? Studies have shown that for every dollar you spend increasing your building codes, when a disaster strikes, you're going to save $6 on the back end. So that's a national average. So anytime you can do that, that's a good thing to do. But any planning needs, we'll consider those. Now, one of the questions that we got at the end of the last thing that we didn't get to was a question about, should we submit something to HUD in hopes that it will get funded? And I will say this, I would strongly encourage you to look at what's eligible in the Housing and Community Development Act, and the likelihood that those projects and activities are going to get funded over some that may not fit in there is very great. And then the next question we got most asked by most of the local governments and different folks is the question on joint application submissions. So there's 2 different sets of criteria that we've come to here. If you're in a mid-county, so if you're in a mid-county, if you're in Dougherty County or you're in, Camden or Camden County or Glenn County, if you're on one of those mid counties, and I think what's the other one? It's in 31705. Well, there's a little bit of 31705 that touches another county, and I think it's Worth. Let me back up real quick. Just want to make sure. So because it's going to be different, the criteria will be. So that's going to be Worth County. So thinking about that, if you're in a mid county and you submit a joint application, that does not take away from your other 3. So if you're a local government and you submit jointly with another agency or another part of the county, it's not going to impact your 3 submissions. However, if you are one of the other 13 counties and you submit a joint application, you are going to have to relinquish one of your 3 priority projects. So if 2 counties joined in, they would lose one local, or a city and a county joined together, they would lose one of their local submissions, because we want to make sure that it's a truly collaborative project and there are limited resources to go around. And then also, like if you had 3 cities joining in with another county or another city, each one of you guys would lose one of your local submissions. So again, who can submit a pre-application? Units of local government will submit those pre-applications. Will radio infrastructure, radio equipment, or enhanced 911 equipment be eligible for funding? And I'm going to cover this on another slide because I've gotten this question a lot. And then again, when is the deadline for submitting pre-applications? The deadline for submitting pre-applications is January 15th, 2020. And if you follow the link right here, as I'll send this out, it'll take you straight to the pre-application, and all of that information is included in there. So back to number 3. It must be a CDBG eligible activity under Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974, or the HCD Act. I've included a link to the eligible activities. I've also included a link to things that are typically ineligible as far as equipment goes. So if you're looking in the Federal Register, if you're looking at codes, it's 24 CFR 570 is where you want to look. And then there's codes to things that are eligible and things that are ineligible. We are not going to help make those determinations as far as what you submit. You submit what you think is eligible based on what you read and what you review there, because Georgia, if you can make a strong enough case, we'll get with you and make the case with you. But if it's something that you see that's typically ineligible, it will probably be ineligible here too. Use those things as leverage if you have part of the project that is eligible. And we got questions about demonstrating area benefit to low to moderate income persons, knowing that these activities that are benefiting LMI populations, they're going to be looked at first. They're going to be prioritized. So, because 50% of all of our funds must go to these areas to benefit low to moderate income individuals. So, here's a link to a webinar, a video that's going to help you determine how to demonstrate that area benefit. Now, again, the recorded webinars will be uploaded to the mitigation webpage, and all questions and answers, like I said, will be posted up there as well. And then we're going to send the presentation to everyone that registered. Before I go into Q&A, open Q&A, and please, if you have a question, you can go ahead and type it, and then we're going to start looking at them here in just a minute. But before we go into Q&A, if there's anything, I got Kathy Tremblay here with me. She's the project manager over our unmet needs funds. And Kathy, do you have anything to add to what we were talking about here so far, or do you think we're good to go into Q&A?
The only thing I would say is that the deadline for submitting pre-applications is 5 p.m. on January 15th, 2020. So please don't wait until the very last minute to send those in via email, because if it says 5:01, we will not be able to accept.
All right. So that's very good advice. Now I'm going to open it and see if anybody has any questions. So far we have no questions. So I'm going to wait just a minute to see if you guys want to type anything out. If not, we will conclude this, and all right. I do not see any questions coming through. Oh, wait a minute. We got one here. Okay. Wow, this is good. So, type of proposed activity states include all structures in the activity area. If a project is replacing culverts in a neighborhood, do we select residential property and roadways and identify the number of homes in that neighborhood and culverts replaced? Yes, you would need to do that. Again, remember, in the pre-application, we are not looking for all the details that you're going to include in a full submission, but this would demonstrate your benefit to low to moderate income populations if they are. So yes, you need to collect that data. If you got it, it's going to be great. So if you can include that, that'll be great, because we are again trying to reduce any damage to life or property. So then I got a question. The next one, I hope I've answered your question. The next question I got is, how soon will we get the slides? As soon as we are done, I am going to shoot an email back to everyone who is on this. I'm going to try to do it that way. If not, I will send it out through the method that we sent out, the reminder. But then I'll try to get them uploaded as quick as possible to the website. But hopefully by the close of business today, you have the slides. Now, okay, here's another question. FEMA Community Lifelines, it says imminent hazard mitigation includes flood control, correct? For replacing culverts, should we select transportation, highway, roads? I'm going to leave that up to you. Just note, in some activities may address more than one community lifeline. So I would leave that up to you as far as how you want to select that. And again, all these pre-applications are doing is guiding the direction of our state action plan. We're just trying to get a pulse or a read of what activities are actually out there and what the needs are of the communities. So, do we have any more questions? If we don't have any more questions, I do thank you guys for your attendance, and your questions are always good. They help us. We are partners in this together, so we're trying to take your input into guiding the development of this plan, because we know you guys know the needs of your communities better than anybody. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and shut this down, and let us know if you need anything. Thanks for your participation.